Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As you may know, in the past week, there's been a lot of talk about blasphemy. We know about the Charlie Hebdo magazine, which has republished the vile and disgusting cartoons of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's also the case of President Macron of France coming out and stating that he defends the right for people to blaspheme because this is part of freedom of expression. Now, when it comes down to the freedoms, brothers and sisters, as Muslims, we need to be really careful because sometimes you get Muslims who actually use the premise of the West to try to defend Islam using these freedoms. Okay, now the issue is that the issue of freedoms, whether it's freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of ownership, all these freedoms, they come out of the secular ideology, the secular aqidah, the secular creed. Okay, and this is part of their culture and this is part of their values. So this is what they believe in. They believe that man is free, and this is part of their belief, right? Now the thing is that if you look at President Macron's recent statement, what he said is that he's against Islamic separatism. Basically what he was saying is that you can't be French and not believe in these values. Okay, and the same thing happens, in the UK when there's talk about Muslims not integrating, not accepting the British values, the British culture. This doesn't mean just eating fish and chips and wearing Western clothes. It means more than this, right? It means adopting their way of life and holding those values close to you, which they hold, which freedoms and democracy is part of it. Now, when it comes down to freedoms, as Muslims, we know that we are abd, that we are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so we don't have freedom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us free will, yes, that we can decide whether we do a good action or a bad action. But we don't have the freedom to decide what is good and what is bad. Because this is something which only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to do. So let me give you an example which might make it easier to understand what I'm trying to say, right? Now, I've heard people talk about freedoms and human rights and that, these are fine. And many Muslims even use this premise of freedoms to say, well, I should be free to wear what I want, so I choose to wear the jilbab, the hijab. So we see that people are using the premise of freedom even to try to back Islamic rules. Now, imagine your child comes home and he says to you that he has left Islam. How would you feel about this? Would you say that this is fine because he's free to choose his religion? This is freedom of religion? No, you wouldn't. As Muslims, we know that this is not allowed. Okay? Or what if your child chose to, have same-sex marriage? Or just say your child wanted to have tattoos. These things you wouldn't allow because these go against Islam. Yet, if we use freedoms as a premise, then the child can turn around and say, well, this is my freedom to do this. You see, in Islam, we don't accept this. And in the same way, freedom of ownership. In Islam, can we own what we want? And then you also have freedom of expression, i.e. where the West say that they can use this to blaspheme, they can say what they want. But as Muslims, can we backbite? Can we say what we want? We can't. So you see, as Muslims, we are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam have told us how to live our lives, what we can do, what we should do, what we mustn't do. Okay, so as Muslims, we reject this notion of freedom. Okay, freedom to do what you want, freedom to say what you want. And that's why we should not use the premise of freedoms even to defend Islam. Because if you're saying it's my freedom to dress up with the hijab, is it okay for someone to say, well, yeah, that's fine, but it's my right not to wear it? No, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands women that they need to dress in a certain way. And you can apply this on many, many things. So brothers and sisters, this is a very important message that we should understand that our civilization, our belief, our creed is different to that of the West. We are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we look to Him for guidance. Whilst in secularism, in the Western culture, man is the legislator and they will make up and they will decide what is good and what is bad and what is in the interest for people. And the reality is these freedoms are bogus anyway. They don't exist. And in fact, things like freedom of expression, they are hypocritical. Why is it you can say what you want, but then on the other hand, you can't criticize or even historically question events such as the Holocaust? In some places, you'll be thrown into prison. Surely, if you're free to insult anyone, if you're free to say what you want, then this should be across the board. So this was just a short message from myself. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.